Hi, it's Hazel. Welcome to my channel, Hazel Anaka Design. This is day 36 in the 100-day project. And today I'm going to be putting together little, I don't know, what is the word? I don't know. I'm using 3 envelopes. I'm putting together 3 envelopes to create a little flippy floppy thing. And maybe in typical Hazel fashion, I have some tips, and I also have Exhibit A of how not to do things as well. So a long time ago, in a place far away, I started watching videos about junk journals and what they are, and it was a whole new world, and it was kind of the start of COVID, and nothing but opportunities to watch videos. So I thought, well, let me watch a lot of videos. Let me find out. Let me determine who the guru is and find the proper way to do everything and, just get on with it. Well, I'm here to say that there is no one way to do anything. There are certainly established YouTubers and established artisans and artists who are doing these things and have logged more hours and have more experience than any of us. There are also those people who haven't yet cut their first piece of paper. So I think it's important to keep things in perspective and really try to avoid comparing ourselves to anyone. But I'd also like to say in the strongest possible way that there is absolutely no only one way to do anything. I was so keen in the beginning, and I felt like kind of, I'm late. I'm jumping on the bandwagon so late in life and so many years after a trend had started. And it occurred to me that, if I take some notes, if I find that the expert, take some notes down to the precise measurement and reconstruct whatever it is, then I'll have gotten it. I will have arrived. I will be it. Well, that, again, frankly, is BS. There are always many ways to do everything. And I really hope that you get that. If you're a beginner, I really hope you get that message sooner rather than later. It will save you a heck of a lot of grief. So I don't want to spend the whole video, sermonizing. So let's look at this. So I, of course, saw countless videos of people putting together these sorts of envelope things. So if I can be kind of critique this thing, and this has been sitting around unfinished, well, probably for 3 years, and there's a reason for that. Number one, my initial envelope choice. I don't know, you can probably, well, maybe you can see. I used those envelopes with that very recognizable design with the horse and the carriage that you get with those foot and mouth artists, those cards, which automatically made me have to hide this inside portion. A plain old white envelope would have been easier to deal with. I also, before I turn the camera on, I've been trimming and trimming and trimming I thought, well, for neatness sake, you want to get as close as you possibly can. Well, of course, after, with a little common sense and after doing things the wrong way, you realize, well, no, that's not good. Because it curls back, it interferes with the proper folding of these new seams, I want to say. It's not seams, but you know, these new foreign folds that we're trying to introduce here. So I've been trimming, you know, folding this back and trimming along here. And just now, I see a little crack of daylight. I managed to cut through the paper right there. Now I know that that is not the end of the world, but I did just create a new problem for myself to fix. You can also see that I'm not very even here with, this is where, you know, that's maybe a 16th of an inch. This is perhaps a 32nd of an inch. That's not good. And of course, to cut myself a wee bit of slack, none of these things are perfectly made. They're not perfectly square. They're not perfectly plumb. They're not perfect. And yet I believe that I could make something perfect. So I don't know. Do I put this in my sample binder and just chalk it up to, you know, stuff happens? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll just put it aside for now. At this moment, it is closing reasonably well. I do have to say that. So there's that. So in anticipation of doing this video and wanting to, you know, do it right, I gathered up these 6-inch square envelopes that I have. And I did make a prototype, which I'll show you in a minute. But the reason I left some of these scraps on this table was to remind myself to talk about them. Life can be so much easier if we do maybe take a little bit more time at the beginning in this sort of dry fitting stage. Because of course I did attempt to decorate one, or did get some decorating done on one of the examples. But you know, and that pointed up a few more reminders. So let's be really clear about something. If you have something gaping like this, please, for your own sanity, secure it, glue stick or art glitter glue or, you know, used gum or whatever. Do those sorts of repairs before you begin. Because, of course, I bypassed that step because, you know, need to make the video, need to get on with things. And the reality is that this will still need to be fixed, except when you do it later, it's so much harder, it's so much worse. So do it ahead of time. As you encounter something that needs fixing, fix it. Now, I chose to use these envelopes because I have a gazillion of them. And in order not to feel buyer's remorse, I need to use them and feel like, you know, it wasn't a dumb thing to do. Because they're 6 inches square, they're too narrow, to put in the typical journal. But that doesn't mean that a place doesn't exist for them. So as I'm talking, I'm obviously trying to do some of the things I've told you to do. I also, in previous projects, figured out that if I, excuse me, itchy nose, that one way to be able to use the envelopes was to cut them down. So clearly I did that there, which makes me wonder if I'm putting this together in the right way. That end is closed. Okay, let me glue down the flaps and I'll regroup here. Anyway, what I was saying is that I chose this envelope because I have lots of them. You probably don't have 6x6 square envelopes. So if you're doing this for the first time or the 100th time, just know that you can do it with whatever size and shape envelope you have. They could be the, you know, what we call a number 10 business envelope, you know, sort of the, I think it's what, about 9 by 3 inches. You could use fancy little, you could use envelopes from wedding invitations, those kits that we often see in thrift stores. You could use it with tiny little, almost novelty size envelopes, you know, that are 2 or 3 inches in size. Okay, let's regroup here. I think I've gotten everything. Okay, this side is open. And the other thing that exists, because of course I thought, oh, you know, you have to do it this way and you have to use envelope A and it has to be this size and it has to be this way. It either, I guess it helps to work with rather than against what it is that you've gotten. Now these envelopes, as you can see, maybe I'll show you one that I haven't tampered with yet. Well, that's not true. I cut the bottom open. But you can see it's got a wide flap and a very, like, there is really not much access into that envelope. You know, depending on, for, let's say, for our purposes. So, what I could very clearly do, and what I'm saying to you is that if you need to alter something, so for instance, suppose I wanted there to be easier access there. And you know what? I can even, normally I would say don't make a crisp fold, like line up the two pieces, don't make a crisp fold, but it's all going to be covered, so it doesn't matter. So a person could certainly make this you know, with deeper access. The other thing a person can do, and again, that and that's going to be the takeaway from this video, is that you can do whatever you need to do to make this work. I could, because we've seen that it's not that well glued, I could take this apart, totally line the inside. This way, unless I wanted a crisp white look, I'm going to have quite a bit of white showing here. So it's easy enough to open up one of these sides. Oh, maybe easier than I thought. Okay, if I wanted to make sure that this inside part was not white, suppose I was doing a totally grungy thing and I didn't want that bright white showing, this would be the easiest way to fix this. You'll notice on this example that I used some coffee dyed paper as a partial lining, because obviously getting a gluey piece of paper very far into a closed envelope is not pleasant. Now, obviously this could have been opened up and that would have made the job easier. But you can also see that I inked along some of those edges. Again, I don't know what my ultimate plan was. You can also see that from wear and tear, that this is now letting go. So at this point, if you find that, you know, either because of the weight of the paper itself, or because you've been overzealous in how you were handling it, or whatever, it would be easy at this stage of the game to either use you know, washi tape or masking tape or Scotch tape to reinforce that, because it would be a shame to do all this work and then sort of have it disintegrate. So that's what I'm showing you there. The other thing that, where are my scraps here? Oh, I threw it away. You can see that when I was starting to do some trimming, you have to kind of be prepared to even take off these little micro slivers of paper. Now, I don't know if this came off an end when I opened up the end of the envelope or where exactly it came from, but be prepared to do these sorts of things. You also saw in this thing how wide this flap was. Well, yes, maybe that would reinforce things, but it also, again, is that much more that you need to glue and insert and make stick. So I think that it would be simpler, that it is simpler, to trim these flaps down a bit. So if I have glue on this, it doesn't have to go as far, and I can make contact and glue it down. The glue is not starting to dry before I get it where it needs to be. These little triangles show me that I also changed the shape of this. Number one, to make it easier to insert them, and, you know, to reduce some of the bulk in there. Okay, is this the one with the cut bottom? No, it isn't. Now, if I could have figured out a way to do it without changing the overall height of this, I would also point out that this center section, well, I guess I could do that. Yeah, why don't I do that? I can take a very skinny sliver, and I'm talking just barely enough to open this up, because you don't really want to change the height necessarily. That now means that this becomes a top-loading pocket. Now, the other thing, I guess, to be aware of is that you do need a way to attach these things to each other. And there is, you know, even though I'm kind of pointing up all the pitfalls, there is a way to disguise some of the mechanics of this, and of that, of course, is when we start decorating the papers, and to, I guess, also reinforce things if you want to later in the game. So, okay, let's assume that this is kind of how we want it to be. So what I would be doing, and I think at this point I'm not going to actually do it. I'm just sort of dry fitting things. I would be picking, well, okay, let's back up a step. Before that, I would decide, okay, what do I want? How do I want this thing to function in the end? We already know that based on the small cuts that I've done, that this is going to be a pocket here. Now, that's kind of a handy thing, actually, because if my spacing when I glue here isn't quite perfect, I can always trim this down another, you know, millimeter or whatever to make sure that it closes without binding. And you also want to decide, how do you want this to open? You know, it could open that way. And it could even be such a thing that these do not line up, that they're not flush. Again, totally personal choice. So you saw me also cut a sliver off the top here, which means that that will be a pocket. So it would make sense at this point, because I know that this is open, so it would make sense to close this up. And I'm just thinking maybe, you know what, why don't I just use tape? It saves having to try to do a tiny bead of glue there. So, is this the most efficient way? I don't know. It is one way. Oh, you can see how clean my hand was there. So let me trim that off. Yeah, that's glue that had picked up off my hands. That's kind of gross. Let me cut that off. Okay, so let's just check to see, whoops, whether or not this is really closed. No, it didn't, children. Let's try this again, but in this case, I'm going to be going over the fold. And I cut the tape too short, which means I'm going to trim the excess here. This is going to serve two purposes. It's going to close the bottom of this pocket with the opening here. And boy, I really should try to get some of this glue off my hands. And it's also going to serve to reinforce this fold. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could go around the corner and it would strengthen the other side as well. Now, understand that the more of these sorts of things you do, the more it is going to impede the folding off, you know, the folding that needs to occur to make things close right. Or, yeah, open and close right. Okay, so, and I think that is probably, I'd say that's a pretty good piece of advice. Look at each of your component pieces. Do the repairs that they need, whether it's gluing down flaps that hadn't been totally glued down by the manufacturer, closing things that you want closed. So this will be going here, and that will be folding in. But as I said, because I've already chosen to make this an outside pocket, or have an outside opening to create a pocket, see, adding that bit of tape has already made this a bit tougher. It's not folding as nicely as it used to. So you kind of give up one thing and you get, you sacrifice one thing for another thing. Okay, so this piece is fine. Now, because this is going to be attached, these two are going to be attached here on this side where the flap is and on this side where the flap is. What I could do is choose to make this a more obvious pocket, you know, by making sort of, I don't want to say, I was going to say a scalloped edge, but that's not right. By making it a boat neck. a boat neck on a sweater, or a crew neck. I don't think I'm going to do that now because it would be so much easier to do it after the paper is decorated. You know, because if I pick some kind of an obscure angle here, or, you know, crescent shape, then that means I give myself an extra challenge of matching the paper to that. Let's not complicate our lives more than we need to. That could be trimmed afterwards, or a divot could be put in with a punch. So let's think this through. We want easy access with this pocket opening. So it seems like we don't want it to catch on to anything there. So we would probably want to make this our first area that we're gluing. And I would also maybe at this point suggest, because we have pretty good access because I've cut that open, let's put, let me get something under here for gluing, and maybe you'd even see better if there was some contrast. Okay, what I'm going to do, and you know what else might be a good idea? Let me do that right now. Grab a pencil and draw some arrows, because I think it's going to be very easy to switch something around. And, you know, maybe at this point it doesn't matter because it hasn't been decorated, but at some point it will matter. And it would just be good if all the papers were going the way you originally intended. Okay, so what I was saying is I'm going to put glue on this surface. I'm going to insert it under here, and at the same time, hopefully get the spacing just right. Now you can see, I don't really want to, well, again, I guess you just have to be aware of where that fold is on the particular envelopes that you're using. Okay, so this is going to be glued to this underside. So I obviously want to put the glue on this upper side. And, you know, trying to get it as close to where it needs to be as possible without going too far beyond. Okay, so I'm putting that in there. Thank goodness, you know, glue stick is kind of forgiving. It's not really going to grab until I press down on it. Now you can see, or hopefully you can see, that it wants to bind right there. So I'm just going to snip that little thing off. And I guess I should do this side as well. And again, at this point, neatness isn't that critical because it will be covered with, you know, decorative paper. Now maybe it's easier, you can check your positioning on the other side as well, again, before pressing it down. You know, that looks pretty even top to bottom. Maybe just for the heck of it. I think, you know what? I'm going to peel that back. I think sometimes I try too hard to make it really... Tearing wasn't part of the plan. To make it really neat and You know what? I don't need such a big flap either. Let's make life even simpler. Okay, I'm going to reapply the glue. Because really, you know, this is not going to go anywhere. So it seems to me that allowing a little more space is preferable than getting it too tight. So that, at this point, is folding quite nicely. I think I might want to take a smidge more of that off. And the reason, again, the reason I'm showing you all the mistakes and pointing out the blunders and the, well, number one, I want to be authentic. I don't want anyone out there to think that, oh, she's coming off as somebody who never makes mistakes, because that would be far, far, far from the truth. And I also think that beginners can get intimidated. So I just want to be totally upfront and say that it is possible to do this, and almost anything that you may consider a mistake is in fact going to be fixable. Now, I don't like that little thing extending, so I'm going to nip that off. So, okay, this is what we have so far. This is going to be a top-loading pocket. That flap has been glued down, which means that if, you know, that's the desire, this could also be a pocket. Or at the last moment, this could be opened up, which frankly I think would make more sense. But I don't think that decision has to be made just yet. So let's carry on and glue this down. So by gluing this flap down, again, the little arrows show that this is where the pocket will be. I'm just wondering, though, if it might not... I feel like I would like to add a little bead of art glitter glue here. Number one, because I ripped out that little section there. I mean, it's not going to... I shouldn't have gotten it that close to the fold. It's not going to significantly, you know, make the pocket narrower. I mean, that tiny thing there really does nothing. And then I'm going to glue this down. But I think, keeping with what I've already said, I will reduce this in size as well, just to reduce some of the bulk. So at this point, it will be easiest to add the glue. And again, it's, you know, your glue of choice. Knowing that, actually, maybe that's a better way to do it. Fold it closed, and that way you know that you're not impeding the ability to fold it. Okay, so then we have, so again, up, up, up. We've already taped this shut, so this pocket is not going anywhere. And you know what? That really wasn't even totally necessary, because it's the contents of this pocket are not going to be able to go anywhere once this gets glued down. So again, to make sure that the glue gets where it needs to be, and only where it needs to be, I'm putting glue on the flap. Again, just to get into the habit of right side up, I'm going to put it on this way, ensuring that I've got the space there. For an easy fold. Oh, did you just hear my elbow crack? I mean, not my elbow, my shoulder. Not quite even. I don't really want to look at the other side and judge by that, because of course I cut that without measuring. I just eyeballed it, so who knows? The other saving grace with any of these is that we get to choose how they open and close. Now, again, because I'm used to books opening like so, that is my preference. But there's nothing that said it couldn't close that way if the mechanics were right. Okay. Now, at this point, we're trying to see whether or not this closes smoothly without any binding. And I think, just for the heck of it, let me reach for a mat. Oh. I think just for the heck of it, I'm going to cut another little sliver of this off. Now it's hard to, oh yeah, that would have been a good place to cut. Oh Lord. I'm lining it up on a horizontal. I'm grabbing a knife. Things are falling. Don't want an 18-inch ruler. Oh, I didn't need a 15-inch either. I think just to err on the side of real caution, I'm going to take that much off. It's not going to materially change how the thing functions, but it will avoid future folding issues. So that's what we have so far. That looks a little bit weird there. You know what? If I take this thing to completion and am annoyed by this divot or this little unevenness here, I could always slap on some lace. Now, until I cut this to make this a pocket here, I could have flipped this thing over and over again to make it make the top whichever I wanted it to be. So for instance, on this first one, there's nothing here that says this is up. I better make sure you can see what I'm talking about. There's nothing that says this is up. This could be up. So I would say that once you've got your base envelopes, you know, attached the way you intended them to be, you know, just play with it a bit to see which way it feels easier to manipulate? Which way feels like it's going to work more smoothly? And let that be. And then make your decision. Maybe mark it initially with some little pencil arrows to help you remember which way to attach your papers. Now, of course, given all, well, those are my Tic Tacs, they fell over. Given that I've spent a lot of time talking already, I did prepare another set, but I'm not going to bother doing that gluing. But you can see how narrow I made these flaps. I do want to show you the one that I began decorating. Now, these papers are from Tracy Fox, and they are, I think it's called, I promised myself I'd get better at doing this, Ula Chic. So it is got a French theme to it. And basically what I did was print them, tear the white strips off, kind of decide what I wanted to put where. I knew I wanted a girl on what I consider the front cover. And you can see that despite my best efforts, it is not very well centered on this envelope. I would have hoped for a more even white edge all around, but I'm not going to worry my little head about it because this could be covered either with ribbon or lace in the end. It could be inked, which that was not, I have to say, that was not my plan. I liked the idea of the white showing because there is a lightness to these papers. I did cut a divot here, as you can see. Oh, guess my punch didn't work that well there. I did make a divot there to show that it's a pocket. This is totally wide open on both sides. So something could be tucked in there, clearly from either side. I don't know if that's a genius design plan or if that is asking for trouble. I guess I won't know till I go a little further with the project. And then this too was cut so that there'd be an outside pocket here as well, which means that I close, and I think I just used a bead of art glitter glue along inside there to close that off. You can see that it closes nicely because that option to trim more off still exists. You know, just as I did on the last one. If I felt that, ooh, that's getting kind of close, I could have, and who knows, maybe I still will. Yeah, what the heck. Let's cut a little more off. So again, lining it up on the, and again, it's not that easy to line it up because these two envelopes aren't exactly perfect here either. But you kind of, sometimes you just have to kind of split the difference. And again, I'm not talking about much here. And I didn't pull out a ruler and whatever the last time I cut this, so that could also be an indication of how straight I cut things in the first place. That makes that shallow. I tend to like them deeper. I might just recut that divot there. Some folds are naturally going to be smoother and nicer than others. It's just the nature of the beast. So do not fret about that. So let me see the time. Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna call it a day there. I had pulled out some old magazine papers here that I was going to use to begin covering one of these other things. Is this the glued one? No, it isn't. Okay, so I would have started covering this with these papers, but I think I'm not going to, because everyone watching this is capable of figuring that part out. I should say another rookie mistake that I made. Didn't do it today. Haven't done it for a long time. But another mistake that I made initially was thinking that, boy, if I ran my papers across here, that would be so darn strong. So you'd see me doing things, well, if I would have been making videos, you'd see me doing things like that. That may well be true, that it would be a reinforcement to the fold, but it would also make the fold not good whatsoever, because that bulk would then make the folding harder. So resist the urge to run things across folds, because it will. It may seem smart in the beginning, but it does create a problem. So this, of course, is just the base, and it is, because the papers are lovely, it is lovely in itself, but clearly it needs, I will be doing more to it. I'm just not doing it in this video, and I'm not doing it at this time. This is one of those things that, who knows, might sit around for weeks or until after this 100-day project extravaganza that I actually get back to it. One of the other things, and this will be my final thought on the matter, is that about the time I was getting into this whole junk journal thing, there was video after video after video, because of course somebody does something and then everyone else does their take on it, which means that you get saturated with all of this, the same thing, the same concept being done by everyone and his brother. So it was just like when this company, I don't know if they were giving them gratis or how it happened to be, but people were on this wax seal making kick. So every second video was about wax seals. They were all using a particular product. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that about this time that I was seeing these envelope things, there was also that whole thing about getting, 5 or 7 or 9 envelopes and of different sizes, and creating all these, opening and closing things. So you'd end up with a great big one at the back, and then they get progressively smaller, and they close this way and that way, and maybe there'd be another, pretend that was something else, pretend this was smaller, there'd be another envelope here and another envelope here, and it was just like, you name it, there were a million folds. So I think my advice, if you're doing this for the first time, is maybe stick to 3. Or a person could also alternately start with 2 and then just, anyway, start small. That's my take on it. And of course, you're free to do your own thing and make your own discoveries, learn from your own mistakes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's sort of like real life. Anyway, this is where I'm going to stop for today. Thank you so much for joining me. This was day, oh my God, I should put a post-it here, because when you film several, you You lose track. Anyway, I don't know what day it is. I don't know what year it is. I don't know my name anymore. Please come back tomorrow for another video. Thanks. Bye.